It's 7 o'clock. We're gonna start the meeting. We do have a quorum. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held August 26th. The minutes are in your packet. I need a motion to approve the minutes as written. Make a motion. Motion been made.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any corrections, anything? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next item on the agenda is financial report for Alan.
Okay, I think everybody has a little financial report packet on their, in front of them, and you'll find 4 things. The first one is just a list of all the checks written, all the disbursements for the month of August, and they're itemized by vendor, so you can see exactly who was paid and how much for each check, and a total of $54,026, right? So you can do those with your item. You know, if you have any questions, the next thing behind that, by the way, is the summary of payroll, and it just shows what we paid in payroll for the month of August, and year to date, so we can, that's all, and also disbursements. So the first 2 pages are the disbursements for August, and year to date.
Anybody have any questions on those 2 documents for Alan?
All right, then we'll move on to your financial statements. Same format as you've seen in, on page 2, which is the first financial statements, you'll see the same as you do, everyone. List of your assets and your liabilities as of the end of September, end of October. I'm sorry, end of August. And cash position is relatively unchanged, $30,000 at the end of the month. Certificates of deposit has not changed, $291,000. Accounts receivable are pretty normal at about $32,000, and construction materials about $36,000. So there's been no major changes in any of those 4 items except for cash. We've gradually brought this cash balance down, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can see your total current assets for those items. Those side of $400,000, no changes in your capital assets, your well distribution system, etc., and the depreciation on those. So we have total assets of $884,000. About a third of that is cash and receivables and material. The rest of it's tied up in the depreciation system. We have about the same amount of money tied up in accrued expenses. Those are bills that have been received but not paid yet. We've got customer deposits, $66,822, not much change there. So the total liabilities is a little over $79,000, and that leaves our net worth position a little over $800,000. So not a ton of change there, except the cash balance is going down, and we're going to see why on the next page. Are there any questions on assets and liabilities? Okay. If you flip to the next page, there'll be a little more discussion on this statement. This is revenues and expenses for the month of, it's really for the month of, what month are we in? This is September, so this is August. That really is the fact. I want to say September. That month is not around. Water sales are a little bit less than last month at $37,000 and change. A little bit higher than June, but it's reasonable and consistent with prior months. It still is a higher usage month at the end of August. Just wasn't quite as high as July. So on the revenue side, it was about as expected, about when we kind of looked at the budget numbers and projections when we did the rate study, pretty similar. And the through August, operating revenue is $283,000 and change. That also is within the projections that we did for the rate. When we get down to the operating expenses, most of them, you can look through them line item by line item, most of them are reasonable in accordance with what our expectations were. By far, the 3 biggest expenses, as expected, would be maintenance and repairs, utilities, and payroll expense. The issue, as you can see, June and July were good months. We didn't have a ton of system maintenance and repairs, and most of the other expenses were within expectations and manageable. This month, that system maintenance and repairs number has shot up to, you can see, $43,000 in change. And you can see the detail that was paid contractors that were fixing leaks. That has brought our year-to-date system maintenance and repair up to $192,000. So we've had 2 good months followed by this month, which is not so good. We're gonna talk about this just a little bit more on the next paper I got for it. That brought our total expenditures for August up to $56,000 and change, or a net loss of $18,000. And you can see year-to-date, total revenues are $283,000 and change, and total expenses were $353,000 and change. So for a net loss for the year of $69,000. We did have a little bit of interest income both in August and year-to-date. It drives that loss down a little bit, but we're operating in the red is really the short answer. And it's what's driving this negative cash flow is the system maintenance and repairs. And I'm concerned about it. I've mentioned it before, but I continue to be, I'm starting to get really concerned about it. Because what I'm seeing, I can't tell it without an operations expert exactly what's going on, and when we fix the repairs, what expectation we can or should have for improved or reduced water loss. We would hope, some of these things are emergencies and they just have to be fixed to get people back in water, and I understand that. But what we're not seeing, and this is why, well, first of all, are there any questions overall? I want to talk about the maintenance and repairs a little bit longer, but I got a separate letter for that and a separate chart. Are there any questions on the financial statements overall? Okay, if not, I don't have any changes to those except that date where it was August, I typo a little bit. Cover pages, right? So I think what we just had a bad month in August. Had a bad month, and what was driving that was just the system repair. So that's it for the financial statement, but I do have a follow-up.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, you've got, the last thing you got is just a letter. You can read it later, you can read it now, but really what this is telling us, and attached to it is a chart, and what I'd like you to do is look at the chart. And what I have done, really for my own knowledge, but I want to share with the board, is I've taken the system totals report out of the billing software for every month of 2000, up through August, for every month of 2024. January's numbers didn't look right. I just didn't feel like I could rely on those numbers. It was before I was here, so I've excluded those. It just looked like maybe something was right in the numbers. But you're gonna see that same, and that column on the left, second from the left, you're gonna see $192,000 in change in system maintenance and repair. And that's the same number we saw in the financial statements. And then you're going to see, and for me, what I'm trying to do is clarify the water loss and what's happening. I can see we're spending a lot. But I would like to see, are these expenditures driving down our water loss? And I know in the board meetings, I wish one was here, but she's not here, but I know we've been talking about that each month, but I don't see that in this chart. When I look at the water pump, here's a list by month, right from the billing system, of all the water this month. And you can see so far, it's 74 million in change. We can see how much of that is sold, and that this is what we're getting for billing our customers. And you can see that's $22 million. I'm sorry, 22 million gallons in change. So really, and I've highlighted that in yellow, because what we're selling is only 29% of what we're pumping out of the ground. And that's a really high water loss. I think Bill could probably attribute to that as well. But that's a really high water loss. And it's concerning. Now, in the past few months, I've heard as we're talking about it in discussion, we're talking about how much of this water loss, what that means is 70% we're not selling. And we're having conversations about, we can account for this water loss or we can't account for this water loss. And my only comment to the board would be, if we can account for it, in the sense that we're flushing or it's part of a leak repair and flushing afterward, that would imply that we're fixing a major leak and we've had some water loss. Yes, we should be gaining ground. And I do not see, when I look at it month by month by month, any material or significant gaining ground. But what I do see is the cash expenditures going out the door. That we're not in dire straits. I'm going to have it this month or next month or even in 6 months. But it's at a point where I think we have to consider what we're spending. And outside of an absolute emergency to get a customer water, how can we ensure we're spending our money appropriately? Because the limited resource is the funds we have. And if we're not seeing improvement in this water loss percentage, I'm afraid we may be spinning our wheels. And so my concern in this letter is, and by the way, I think we've got the operator in kind of a bad spot. Because we really have, to my knowledge, one person on an island alone trying to make the decisions on what leaks to fix. And that's probably a difficult position to be in. I wouldn't, especially when there's questions around it and pressure to get stuff fixed. And so I would like to I just wanna bring it up so we're aware of it. And actually, we talked about this, Amanda and I talked about this about a week ago, and she's already done something. But I suggested, if we haven't called MRWA, Missouri Rural Water Association, to get them down there and try to help us, see what help they can offer as members. But she's already done that, and I think they're coming down tomorrow, so she's ahead of me on that. Just to get someone else that's another expert in the field, someone to point us in the right direction. And we've talked about these other ones, and I'll be down, at some point, I would welcome any board member or other input to help. I'd like to get some support from Mona to say, we need to prioritize and assess the leaks that we have, or the perceived leaks that we have, to make a plan for what we're gonna fix and what we can't. You have a question on that, Bob?
No, I'd be glad to sit down with Mona and come up with a 3-tier system, template. Tier 1 is the absolute worst leak we have, has to be fixed immediately.
Causing damage.
Tier 2 is somewhere in the middle. Tier 3 is, that goes on the list. It's not gonna be a problem right now, but if we have some work going on in the area, we'll get it. And I think Mona knows where a lot of those problems are, and if we refer to the 3 tiers, I think that'll help make decisions on what gets fixed and what doesn't.
I think that's a fantastic idea. And then the last one is really just minimize contract labor expense. You know, as the cynical accountant, I always feel bad because when we hire everything outsource everything, we're exposed to their rates, we're exposed to their time, and that means we're exposed in a big way on cost. And so I don't know if we could ever sit down and have a discussion about, is it cheaper to get someone with an operator's license and use their own equipment and get what equipment we need to do it? At $192,000, that buys a lot of staff time and a lot of equipment. We may be in a position right now where that's not economically feasible because we don't want to run our reserve, but it should be in our minds. And if we're not doing that right now, and this will be a conversation for after we talk to Mona, then we need to say what controls can we put in place on the outsourced contract labor. And even if it's creating our own internal budget on every repair, if it's tier 1 or level 1, and say this is what we think it will cost, approve up to this amount, or there could be multiple ideas of how we do this, but it's something so to the extent the district can, try to control the cost on the outside labor expenditures, other than just leaving ourselves at the mercy of the rates and the hours of the I'm not accusing anybody of anything or even suggesting anybody doing anything wrong. I'm just saying, try to guard the goal to the extent you have.
I think what Bob's saying is a pretty good idea. Lane, would you be willing to sit in on that since you do have that, some area knowledge and that experience? And he's a, machine operator, he's got some of that knowledge, he's retired.
Mona's out all this week, correct? So maybe sometime next week, I'll reach out to Lenny and Owen and see what day we could maybe meet.
And that's really, I want to address it proactively before it becomes a significant problem or even a crisis, but these are the things.
The other question I would say is if you guys, look into when we're doing that little work session, whether or not we should, again, try to go out and get an in-house person, to cut some of those expenses. We haven't in the past, and I think that's kind of been your suggestion too, again, to get somebody in-house again.
We got the backhoe, we got the tractor, and we can do like that. At least try to get some of that.
I think it's worth the conversation with nothing else.
Yeah, it just comes down to what we have to pay that individual. Can we afford them? Can we, what actually works for us?
I've seen some of the bills like that, stuff with the operating, stone, clay, diesel. Yeah, I mean, and not just with the monthly, And that was the highest, one of the highest ones. that we
Mhm.
just recently had.
Lenny would be able to look over that and have a better understanding of, what we're being charged on the rates.
We probably don't market rates these days, we would highlight it.
Right.
All right, well, that's really it in a nutshell, unless there's questions, I'll be happy to try to go over them.
Anybody have any questions for Alan? I'd entertain a motion to approve the disbursements of $54,025.88. I'll make a motion. Motion's been made and seconded. Any additional discussion on the motion? Bob, I appreciate you stepping up and wanting to do that. I know Lenny will be a big help for you on that. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes.
Give you a little heads up, hopefully, about it.
Yeah, well, I'll get with you next week when I know what Mona's up to.
Ramona's not here this week, so we'll address her, operations, notes at the next meeting. Bob, you have an update. You had been kind of you volunteered to reach out to Missouri American. You had entered into a letter of intent with them a significant time ago, and you were gonna follow up with them and find out where we were at and get some questions answered.
Yes.
We're gonna turn it over to you.
All right. So Mona and I met with Matt Barnhart. He's the Director of Operations, Southwest Missouri for.
What was his name again?
Matt Barnhart
Okay.
for Missouri American Water. And, it was a good meeting. Matt had said since our previous phone call that I had with him, he had found the letter of intent, loaded it in the system. I asked him if he had everything that they needed. He replied that Jody had given them everything they had requested. Matt said they also had previously toured the visible infrastructure and found everything in good working order. Of course, he does understand that the unseen infrastructure is in rough shape. I asked them if they were able to make a decision as to whether Missouri American Water would proceed with a purchase of PWSD number one. He replied that with what they know, they would proceed. He asked what PWSD would be expecting from Missouri American. I told him that I couldn't speak for the entire board, but I believe we would expect improvements to the overall aging infrastructure and hopefully 8-inch mains to handle fire protection for our residents. He said that would be done. I asked if he had an idea of an approximate cost for that. He said about $5 million. Matt said one question that most water districts selling to Missouri American want to know is what will happen to their employees. He said that they would want to keep the office manager, hopefully she would stay. He actually then turned to Mona and asked her if she would consider staying on. And then Matt said that they would utilize the existing office as their hub of operations for other area holdings and work out of our building. I asked if he could give a ballpark time frame of when things could start and be completed if everything was agreed upon, signed, received the judge's approval and district voters' approval. He said when in their control, some items would start immediately, but not to expect completion for up to 5 to 7 years. Previously, it had been mentioned that about $2 million would be available for upgrades. I asked if that still stood true, and Matt replied yes. In addition, he added that as part of the sale, an appraiser would determine the value of all holdings. That amount could also go towards all improvements designated by the board as part of the sale. I asked Matt if PWSD's quest for fire protection and the city of Kimberly City's desire to prepare for future growth would Missouri American construct a water tower? He said they would. I asked if he knew what the cost might be. He surmised roughly $3 million. I asked if they would consider leasing the land from the city on Fire Station Road if it were offered. He replied that they would prefer to purchase the land, but either way, they would still be interested. So based on that little bit of information I've got right there, I think it's an exciting, plausible option for the future. Henceforth, I'd like to make a motion that we have a closed session to meet with Matt so that the board can ask more questions and dive into any particulars.
I would ask our attorney whether or not, obviously there would be some discussion over real estate sale as well as some legalities. Would that be an appropriate closed session under the sunshine law?
I'll have to look at it. I generally always say no, but it's better to do open meetings.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I'll look at it and see if possibly it would come under the statute. If anybody wants to look at the statutes, it's 610-070.
Yep.
I would definitely make myself available for any special meetings, but at the very least, let's have a representative from possibly Matt at our next board meeting.
Did you ask Matt about rate, what he thought the rate might be if they didn't go ahead with the proposal?
Yeah, the water rate most likely would go down because they would have to match what they're currently doing in the area here. I don't know exactly what that was. He didn't give it to me at that time, but I told him what we were looking at our current rates, and he said that most likely the rate would go down.
Anybody else have any questions for Bob? Bob, at the very least, we need to invite him to the next meeting.
Yep.
I'm sure
I can do
some of the
that.
board members will have some questions.
Okay.
I know we had some questions from public that was sent in. Do you have that letter?
I got it. I have
You got it?
Yeah.
I believe you answered most of those questions. Deb, you're in the audience. You're the one that sent the letter. I think, did you answer all of her questions on that letter?
I do believe so.
Sounds like you did.
I did, okay.
Anybody else have any more questions for Bob? Hearing none, we'll move on to open forum. We do have a request to speak from Don Gardner. Don Gardner is going to speak on updates from the city plans for consolidation of leads.
First of all, thank you for that update. It's very, very encouraging from the city standpoint, that you are open to talking with Missouri American again, as I know that they have been trying to work with PWSD for over a year now on the letter of intent. So I appreciate that from a city perspective as we work towards water consolidation. PWSD board, my name is Dawn Gardner. I'm the city administrator at Kimberly City. For the record, I always like to say I'm also a resident of the PWSD district, but tonight I'm representing the city. So, again, I want to speak with you today regarding some updates with working toward water consolidation in the city. Bob covered some of that, but I do also want to address a few items of concern. At your board meeting on May 30th, 2024, I gave a presentation on a city partnership with PWSD. Utilities and the city those utilities provide service for should be working together. I requested to be put on the agenda, but I was told I would have to give my presentation during the customer open comment period of the meeting. I was given more than 3 minutes, and I appreciate that, but I was chastised for not having my presentation to the board prior to the meeting so they could review it. When I requested to speak at this meeting before it was scheduled, I requested to be on the agenda. I am again placed under customer open comment with the note requested more than 3 minutes. In my 30+ years of state and local public service and working with utility partners, or any partners for that matter, It is never standard practice to have a partner agency submit their presentation in advance or put them on the agenda under the public comment period section. It would be standard practice to have the partner agency as an agenda item so questions can be asked and answered at that time and clarifications can be made and open communication can be given. I would also like to note that the minutes of May 30th, 2024 do not reflect the true intent of my presentation. At the same meeting, a PWSD employee read their employee resignation as an agenda item in an open forum. I would think an employee reading a resignation letter in an open forum would be frowned upon by any public organization, as employee issues are always done in closed session. However, in obtaining a copy of the resignation letter via a sunshine request, one of the reasons Mr. John Dowdy's resignation was, and I quote, pushback from the City of Kimberling City Building Inspector for nearly every project I have done that has involved them in any way. Constant accusations of wrongdoing. I truly believe that the PWSD board made it a point to have Mr. Dowdy read this resignation in a public forum as an attempt to embarrass the city. I did attempt to meet with Mr. Dowdy after this meeting to sit down and discuss what took place. I was not successful in getting a meeting with him. I do know that the city does require permits for road cuts, notifications of road closures, and an inspector to be on site during placement of rock and asphalt when repairing a road cut. Those requirements were not being followed, and it is our job as a city to ensure proper procedures are being followed for any work in the public right-of-way. Wouldn't it have been a more dignified process to meet with the city if Mr. Dowdy was having these issues that were so bad it caused him to resign? If this did cause him to resign, why is he comfortable still working as a contractor for PWSD? He still has to follow the same process that made him resign. Again, this whole scenario shows that the city once again and the PWSD does not want to work together. Furthermore, Mr. McCaffrey, I would like to address something from the open forum in the last meeting. I had a question about PWSD raising rates again because all I've heard since I've been in this district is that the board won't consider the option of letting residents decide if they want to dissolve PWSD and be taken over by a company that has the resources to invest in and expand the system because we don't want our rates to go up. And finishing your explanation of why, in your opinion, it's okay for PWSD to raise rates above Missouri American rates is we have to ask ourselves this question: is raising rates to help individuals or make profits for the very rich? This doesn't even make sense, or does it not have any place in the question that I asked? When I responded that this was not a fair statement, you stated it was the truth. I disagreed. You then very condescendingly stated you didn't know how many districts I represented. You wouldn't let me respond, but I am here to let you know that no, I have not represented any water districts, but I have worked with and partnered with being the key words, many utility organizations throughout my 30-plus career in state transportation and local public work agencies. With that being said, you do not have the best interest of the community as a whole or the residents as a whole, as you do not encourage its water district that you represent to be a partner with the local governing agency. Finally, the city is moving forward with working toward water consolidation. We are in the process of beginning a water consolidation master plan, which should start in November if approved by the Board of Aldermen. I have spoken with all water districts in Kimberling City except Turner, and I am in the process of setting up a meeting with them this week. So far, everyone is open to water consolidation discussions. The next informational meeting for the public will be held on Tuesday, October 22nd at 6:30 p.m. at City Hall, at the City Hall Community Center. This is a public forum, and I hope there will be representation from PWSD at the meeting and possibly begin working together for the best interest of the city as a whole. It is critical that we begin working together as partners in this effort. consolidation of water for Kimberling City is essential for growth and development in our community, which includes housing. We are in dire need of affordable housing. I understand you are moving forward with a bond issue on the February ballot for PWSD customers. I am certain you are aware that the passage of a bond issue and acquiring debt will mean a consolidation of PWSD with any other water district or corporation will be off the table, as state statute defines that for a district to dissolve, there can be no federal debt. Have you relayed this information to the residents in your district when you are talking about the bond issue? Why do you not give the residents of the district you represent a chance to determine the direction they want to go for their water district? I would be happy to work with you on educating the customers on the benefits of water consolidation and the choices they have if the board allows. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Don, appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have nothing under old business, we'll move on to new business, elections and their regularities. Bob, I believe you added this to the agenda, right?
I did. When I joined the board in May, because it was May, this is my 5th meeting. I've been here 4 previous. And one of the things I've heard at a couple of the meetings was that nobody really knows when people were elected to the board, when their terms expired, such forth. So I've kind of been trying to research that a little bit, just to be transparent about everything, because me being on the board, I would just want to make sure we do the right thing. So looking at it, and I'm not saying any of this to pick on anybody, but I mean, I know that I was elected to the board in May, but the way that the bylaws are written, I am filling out the term of the person who I replaced. Now, since I've been here, I started on District 5, and then when Virginia was here for 1 meeting, I was moved to District 3. So that's all something I have to try to figure out when my term is actually up and I would have to run again. James, I believe you were elected in November of last year. I do have to track that still to figure out who you replaced. And when your term actually would be up for renewal. I'm sorry, Lenny, I didn't know you were gonna be here. I had been hearing things that maybe you were no longer gonna be here, but.
I've got some sick family, so I'm
Okay,
trying to figure
yeah.
out what I need.
So I didn't even look at yours, but I'll look at it.
I replaced a person from District 2, and that was 5 years ago.
Well, I would say that, that's, okay.
Approximately.
I'm gonna look at that again, the rest of this week.
So, and I got switched districts depending because we didn't have enough people for the board.
Okay.
So I did get switched once or twice. I mean, we didn't have what we have now.
I've been to that same party, so.
So, I'm just being,
Bob, can I correct that you're appointed, not elected? You're saying elected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Use the terminology.
No, I just wanted to.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
you were,
But there are elections that can happen.
yes.
You're right, I was appointed, and so was James.
And
I guess
And
you
so
were
was I.
also, yes.
yeah, everyone.
Could we see a hand?
I
How many of you were elected or?
I signed up for the
appointed?
election, nobody ran against me, so that I by default, was placed. But I did run, I asked to be appointed, I did not, on a vacant spot, I did not get appointed, I ran for election, nobody ran against me, I was then given the spot.
Where did you run? I mean, you say you ran, where did you
I
run?
went and filled out the paperwork at the water district office, but as the election time came up to put it on the ballot, there was nobody running against me, so by default,
So
the board appointed me at that point.
okay, so,
Otherwise they would spend a bunch of money to put it on the ballot.
so
and
is
there's only one
there
person.
anything coming up this November?
No, not this November, no.
That's what I'm kind of talking about now, anyway.
April we did the election.
I'm trying to sift through to find out when.
I've lived here for 25 years and I've never heard or known, and I've voted, and I've never seen anything on the ballot.
Water district, yeah.
So, we got a breakdown in communication between the board and your customers. Can I ask this, are we still a community water system?
Yes, we're a public water district, we're a quasi-government entity, I believe that's the correct terminology.
Well, that was, when I bought my home, my wife and I bought our home, it was impressed upon us that it was such a good deal that we had this community water system.
Yeah.
And it sounds as though we're going away from a community water system. Am I fair in that assumption?
If the water system gets sold to Missouri American is a private company. Right now, you as a resident, as a member of the water district, own the water district, and hypothetically elect your appointed official. Again, in all the years that I've been here 24 years, I don't remember ever a board position being opposed, and it showed up on the ballot. So I'm right there with you. Been here 24 years. I've never seen anybody. Seems like there's always a vacancy, and if somebody signs up, nobody runs against them, and there's no sense in
Well,
spending
nobody
money.
knows anything about it. I mean, you know. So, excuse me, I'm not trying to be.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying, but yeah,
There
that's,
isn't good, what I'm saying is there's not good communication between the public and the board. Okay? There's a lot of things you're discussing tonight we had no idea of. Not one.
Choose down the back.
Well, this goes back to 1990.
Choose down the back.
yeah.
So anyway, getting back to my original thoughts, so when I looked at you, Jason, I went back to 2021. I don't see where there was another election for you to get back onto the board, from that point. And also, you were first elected president in April of 2022 for a one-year term. You were re-elected in April of 2023 for a one-year term. Your term expired in April. So that's just something that we have to look at also. So, once again, I think it's, the one thing I think I know for
Between that, I
sure,
was vice president though.
in between,
I was president, I was vice president, and then on a meeting I missed, I got re-elected president. That's what happens when you miss a meeting. But yeah, I was vice president between that, Brent Love was president during that time.
okay, I didn't see that in the minutes, but anyway, your term expired in April.
Let's put it on the agenda for next meeting. We also don't have a vice president currently because our board's changed. Our vice president's no longer here.
Correct.
So I say we put that on the agenda to correct that by next meeting.
But I also think that we should, because I believe that you and Lenny's positions, we need to put that out to the public to see if there's anybody interested to run for those districts, to be above board and out there with, and then if someone comes forward, there may have to be an election. And if not, then at the next meeting we can have that.
Yeah.
And then the bylaws state that after that election were to happen, we can then proceed with naming the new president for the year and pick a vice president at the same time.
Sounds good to me.
How long is a term for each candidate?
To be on the board, it's a 3-year term. When people are elected to be president or vice president, it's for a 1-year term.
I just want to say, from my past experience, everybody complains and moans and that, but nobody wants to volunteer to be on the board and to solve the solutions. But they can always make a comment on what's going on. My
Yeah, how many
opinion
years
would
did
be
you serve on the board? You were on the board or you were there when I came on?
like 5, that join the board. Your opinion matters, and that's how you get things accomplished. Otherwise, why are you complaining?
So how do you know
Nobody's
that there's
complaining,
an
just
opening
get the
on the
word
board?
out.
How do you know? How do
It's
you run an
usually
election?
posted on our website.
on the website.
Or on the back of the bill.
Or on the back of the bill.
Things, always on the back of the bills.
Or the text alerts.
Assuming Virginia is gonna resign because of a scheduling conflict, we currently have an open position on the board. So somebody could fill the remaining position on that board if they wanted to come in and fill out an application. The board would review the applications and come in and then we'd appoint somebody to finish out that term.
So it's not an election?
To finish out that term until the next election, yes.
Can you clarify who was the vice president? Because at the last meeting, it was stated that James was the vice president.
No, James is not the vice president, he's never been voted vice president.
But that was stated in
It
the
was
last.
stated at the last
You're
meeting.
right, that was my next thing I was gonna say, we'll get there.
Okay, sorry, Bob.
That's all right, no, that's okay.
Excuse me, can I clarify that if there's a transfer to Missouri American, it has to be put out to the voters? They can't just decide.
That's correct.
That everybody's gotta vote.
Yes, everybody
Everybody
votes
in
on
the
that.
district has to vote on it.
Thank you.
Just like if we were gonna go for a bond issue, they have to vote on that, it has to be approved. Well, you just answered it, at the last meeting, Bill did say to everybody in the room, and I think it took James by surprise too.
I missed that comment.
That James was the vice president and that he could run the meeting, but
No.
we obviously have never voted on it, so that answers that question. The other thing I was gonna say this back when I was talking about the water thing. I am willing to design a newsletter with the help of my wife and put a newsletter out. Well, for sure, this first newsletter I would put together would be the different options that we potentially have, being doing a bond issue and relinquishing to Missouri American. What the pros are, what the cons are, and mail it out to everybody in the district.
Would you
I'll
please?
get that newsletter paid for by some advertising. I don't think it'd be very hard for us to get a few businesses to chip in some money, so we're not doing the postage out of pocket. But if no one has an objection to that, I can work on it. I would send it to all the board members before anything were to happen, so they could give input, make suggestions, possible changes. But then we can keep everybody in the loop within the district
Sounds like a good plan.
that way.
Have you compared Stonebridge's American Water rates, as compared to ours? Because I'm understanding Stonebridge community, that their rates are very high, and they're done by American Water.
Their rates also include sewer and trash too.
Okay.
All of Missouri American rates are the same across the state, except the city of St. Louis has their own rates.
Okay.
The reason that they're higher at Stonebridge is just what she said, it includes trash, and they, from what I understand, they also, are required to water their lawns as a homeowners association, so that will make their bill.
Except this one lady I know, they can't connect, they won't connect to the building.
So, sorry, that's just that's just the information I
Yeah.
have.
Try to get all that straightened out before she goes.
I'm sorry.
On the terms and everything like that.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, Jody's not working on that.
Then if you wanted to listen, you know, that.
Yes. Yes.
As far as when terms are, what's new, what's going on, you get a little bit more information on it.
And once my better half designs the letter, it would be very easy for us to do additional new letters in the future because the format's there, the template's there, and we can get the information out. And I really don't think we'll have much trouble getting businesses in Kimberly City or down the road to want to help pay for that newsletter, because we have 800 households in our district that would love to go eat dinner someplace or buy something or go to the grocery store, whatever we wanna do, so I think that's what we can do.
Sounds like a plan, Bob.
Since you're talking about putting that information out, are you still going to a November ballot, or to get on the ballot for next year?
It wasn't November, it was next February they were talking, but I really believe that if we proceed meeting with Missouri American, that we have two viable options. We've already said that we voted to potentially do a bond issue, which I think we really needed to have ready to go, just in case. But I think Missouri American does give us a viable option, so therefore I think, that's why I wanted to do this first newsletter based on the pros and cons of both things.
There you
Because
go.
there will be pros on both and there will be cons on both.
That's right.
So,
It's gotta be, Bob, it's gotta be straight information, you know, slant one way or the
no,
other.
I know, it has to be, yeah.
Yeah.
I am not a slant kind of guy.
Just saying that you can't
Yeah.
promote, you just gotta get back.
Yeah, it's just the facts, and that's, that's the way it is.
Tom, I would just caution, as a governmental entity, you might wanna check the state statutes on whether you can actually accept sponsorship money or not, as a governmental entity, from private businesses.
Okay, sure,
Just as a cautionary note.
we check that. I don't know if you know the answer to that, Bill, or not.
You have to say it, you can't.
Well, he's talking about the newsletter. If I put a newsletter together and send out to
The board will have to cover the cost,
the board has to cover it.
unless we get donations.
That's what he's saying,
Donations.
if there was an add on there for donations, pay for the postage, would that be?
Sure.
That's okay?
I think you get donations to handle the postage would be fine.
Okay, yeah, I'll double
I
check.
would double check.
But can you put an ad on there? You can take donations, but can you?
Right, no, I get that, I get it, yeah. We'll investigate that.
Does anybody else have any questions for Bob?
Just
Bob, I wanna-
Thank you for your time. Back here. You,
Yes,
I think the gentleman mentioned November, wasn't there a deadline to get something on the ballot for next spring?
We were looking for the bond issue for February.
February.
Right, and
But I believe
thought
Bill
there was a
is-
few month
working on
deadline to get that, right, I'm just saying if it happened that you wanted to put both things on the ballot to give people an option to vote for one or the other.
It was like November 26th, wasn't it, Bill? That everything has to be filed for the election.
For February.
We're sending out an election packet next week. We'll have all that information.
It is at the end of November, somewhere around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's on the Secretary of State's website of when you have to have it filed.
Anybody else have any questions for Bob?
Yes, sir. There are several of us over here tonight because we are very unhappy about this water bill we got. My, 2 months ago, my water bill was $67. Last month, it was $73. Why would I pay $149 because I watered my grass a little bit, and it's only 2,000 gallon more? That is absolutely ridiculous. And I put in the smartphone a while ago on Facebook for people to refuse to pay their water bills, and I hope they do. It is absolutely ridiculous.
I
And ask
understand-
anybody to pay $140 water bill.
I understand, and it took us, we hired an accounting firm to go over our numbers to make sure that we stay solvent, so that the water district is capable of paying its bills and continue to do repairs and upgrades down the road. We've made a lot of major improvements this year, but we definitely needed to raise the rates. We did it, none of us wanted to do it, I'm in the water district too.
There has been no improvements because our water loss is the same. Those are not
We
improvements.
just paid the rate, so that we just passed the water rate increase
You
last
said
month.
you have made improvements.
Yeah, we have,
You just said you had made improvements. And that's
How many
what-
how many gallons are on your water bill?
14,000.
14,000?
Yes.
Well, if you're gonna talk 14,000 times
I don't know the
8.
It don't matter, it's only 2,000 more than the 2 months before.
Well, you got,
I think you and I were talking about it today, that there potentially were some meter reading issues. That we won't know until we're.
Mine was 65.
are able to
Bob,
drive.
can you repeat that?
65?
Mine's double plus 15.
I was asking Amanda some questions today when I was at the office, and there were people calling in, obviously some just finding out of new work, and I believe there potentially could have been some meter reading errors that we have to look into.
Put me on the list.
Yeah,
Put me
so
on the list.
we will need to get your information so we can check on yours tomorrow.
yours? You said yours was
I'll tell you,
Amanda does have a list of the.
Okay.
that, you know,
Yeah, we're keeping a list and checking it twice.
sir,
All water meters not
You
automated.
better tell them so you
They
get
are
on the list.
automated, but, from what, I don't know how the meters operate, to be honest with you. I know they're electronic. They're read from a computer, obviously it digitally reads them. And it's very dependent on the weather, like
It's a radio signal from the transmitter on top of the meter.
Yeah.
We drive around with a truck with a laptop and antenna and pick up the signals as we pass through the neighborhoods. That's the topography, that's how it works.
Yeah, but I did have a gentleman, and he had used significant amount of water. And so when I was able to look back at his history, I was like, that's not right. And so then Lenny called, and I had a couple other ones. So if you do, if that is the case, if your water consumption is twice or even a couple thousand gallons more than usual, email me, call the office.
We do a
send me-
manual audit.
Yeah, send me a smoke signal, anything, we'll get it done. And Mona will be back next week, and so we'll definitely.
From experience, I would just like to say your meter pit lids being steel are gonna be your biggest issue. Automated meters are not designed to go through steel, they're designed to go through composite. So that's an upgrade that you could make, is putting composite lids on all your meter pit lids.
I know that, Richard, they did switch some of them out to composites that they were having trouble reading. So over time, they've learned to make corrections on some of the meters that are difficult to read with radio signals. So,
From
yeah, I
experience, you're gonna have to switch them all out if you wanna have less problems.
Seeing no business in front of the board, we stand adjourned.
We're not done yet. There's a water district. For our water. Wasn't a water district. Board.
Wastewater charge down.
So,
We have down on 1511, do we pay wastewater charges? Wastewater is the city
That's
question.
the city question.
Okay, and, I got a septic tank.
Oh, then no.
No, you don't get wastewater, you charge wastewater.
I was. It's not y'all that goes to the city.
Wastewater would be city, no water district.
Hey, ain't nobody down on Christine that got, wastewater.
I'm not sure, that would be a city question, I'll check with City Hall tomorrow.
Did you get a bill from the city?
No, I ain't got no bill from the zoning bill right here in California.
Tells them the amount that you have to pay for your wastewater, correct?
So we don't send it if you don't have to.
That's what I got.
yes, $149. That's 2,000 gallons more than last year.
something wrong. I guarantee you. You get 2,000 gallons. I got you.
Put your name in one thing. I have to do something.